podcast called Jellison Podcast.
He probably doesn't remember this at all.
Yeah, we work together. It's easy.
This is kind of real. Like, holy shit.
And so it's really cool to get to be a part of that.
Hey, you know how it is, though. Hey, when
you now tune into the biggest ever.
We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
I don't remember that. That's crazy.
What's up, everyone? We're back with episode 122 of the Jellison Podcast. We have a very special guest helping me celebrate National Diabetes Awareness Month, Dr. Charles Loftis. Charles, how are you?
I'm pretty well. How you doing, Dub? Appreciate it.
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you got a busy schedule with your field, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But like I mentioned, we're fellow type 1 diabetics in that community. I mean, obviously, Diabetes Awareness Month is big for me, just being type 1 diabetic basically my entire life. But for you, getting diagnosed at an older age, I mean, does it have a less significance for you or more significance for you?
I would say it probably has, a more significance for me. It was one of the things that out of the blue just happened for me. I just got diagnosed in 2019. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started having the complications and the symptoms out of the blue. And typically, I'm a pretty good with my nutrition, fitness level, and so on. So, I'm pretty conscious of those things. So, whenever I started having the complications, things happened for me. It was a shock to me. I didn't know what the heck was going on. I knew the signs and the symptoms that I was having, but I had never at the time heard of the type 1 diabetes, the LADA, LADA, which stands for latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. I hadn't heard of that. I knew about type 1, typically happen from, 3 to 10 years old. And then, your type 2s, your traditional type 2s, which is just more sedentary lifestyle, poor habits, and just things of that nature. So for me, after I was able to, come to terms with what was going on, it was more so, like, this is a time for me that I can also use this in my field as a strength and conditioning and physical therapy specialist to not only advocate, but also to help with my clients and learn a lot more about, carb counting and so on, and nutrition. Mm-hmm. So I feel like for me that was the significance for me. Like, I was that chosen one to be able to use this and not look at it as a negative thing, but use it to help my career and also with my clients or anyone else that, I come across, paths with, as well as advocate for type 1 diabetics or just diabetes in general. So that's the significance of it for me and how I kind of turned everything around, and I started to focus on that. And also, just like the wearable devices, I know that's a huge issue, especially with the younger kids. Whenever you get diagnosed at 3, 4, or 5, and then you have to wear some type of device where an insulin pump or continuous glucose monitor, and the rest of the world doesn't really know what that is. I remember in 2018 when I first saw an insulin pump and a continuous glucose monitor. That was my first time actually really seeing one. There was a coworker that I worked with that had it, but I just never asked any questions, didn't know what it was, and just left it alone. But now after having to use them myself, I see that the education for it is needed to help with the younger population as well too, just to make people more comfortable with being in their own skin and dealing with their own things that they have going on. Because yes, it's a pretty, sickening disease if you don't manage it, but there's so much technology and so many different things out there that can help manage and control. And if you do that the right way, then, there are other things out there worse than type 1 diabetics and type 1 diabetes. So
100%. And I mean, for me, I have a continuous glucose monitor. I got the new tandem pump, so it communicates with that, which has been, I had my best A1C in my entire life last month when I went to the endocrinologist. So, I mean,
Sweet.
Just
on that.
thank you. I mean, just from the time that I was diagnosed until now, it's a complete 180 in terms of the technology that we've gotten and all the new knowledge that we've gained.
Oh, for sure.
Type 1 diabetics, it's insane. But I've talked to I don't know how many diabetics in my life. I've never heard one say I was the chosen one to get diagnosed.
Yeah, I mean, that's sometimes you have to look at things like that, you know? Like for me, it was like, why? I always ask why? What did I do for this to happen? How did I, you know, what did I do or what did I put in my body to cause the insult on the pancreas? And, you know, after talking to my endocrinologist and, you know, having countless meetings with them and my registered dietitian, it was just one of those things like, we don't know why. You're not going to figure out why. Don't focus on the why, you know, just focus on moving forward in the future. So I look at it like, hey, you know, like, all right, I was one of the chosen ones. And then maybe I can use my voice, use my platform, my social media, whatever it may be, to help encourage other individuals that are going through some of the same things. Literally after, you know, I was diagnosed and I made the announcement on my social media, I had about 2 to 3 individuals, some that I knew, and then one was kind of just an outsource that reached out to me and said, hey, do you mind speaking to my daughter? She's 25. She just got diagnosed with the same thing. Or, you know, my son or such and such, you know what I mean? And the biggest part was the psyche standpoint, the mindset. And it's tough to deal with, especially whenever you're in your early 20s. You're going through all these different changes, you know, relationship things. You start thinking about how are other people going to think about you wearing these devices. So there's so many different things that go in your mind. And, you know, I just felt like, hey, this is why. This is my why. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, much respect to you for that, because for me growing up, I didn't really have someone to look up to that was also type 1 diabetic. I think it was the first one I really remember was Jay Cutler. And he went to, I'm from Indianapolis, just north of there. And he went to Eli Lilly in Indy and had a little like meet and greet type thing. And he was going down there for one of his appointments. And I met him, and it kind of changed my mindset from there. I mean, it's still a process because I still struggle with the idea and the psyche things that you mentioned. But now, I mean, you look at Adam Morrison, who played in the league, Mark Andrews with the Ravens, who I think are doing well right now. I don't know. I mean, there's a couple guys on the Steelers, which is pretty rare to have 2 of them on there.
Right.
And then, I mean, there's one of my really good friends, Jordan Williams. He's the first ever diabetic in the UFC. He just competed last night. So, I mean, nowadays there's so many great individuals for people to look up to, young kids to look up to, and be like, hey, this person has the same thing as me. I one day I hope to have the same impact on the world or have all the success that they've had.
Yeah, no, for sure. I completely agree with you 100%. And you know, it's needed. I was at a wedding this past summer, and it was actually the bride of the wedding. You know, after she saw my insulin pump, she knew exactly what it was. And she's, you know, made a comment to me. She said, oh yeah, I know what that is. I have to do a lot of, she works for public schools where if a kid, I forget her direct title, but if a kid wanted to try to opt out of gym class or using the locker room or whatever else, she has to advocate for them to be able to make that happen, because you know, the kids with the devices, the wearable devices, are not wanting to use those showers, locker rooms, and things because they feel like other kids are going to make fun of them, you know. And I remember, you know, when I was young, I'm 36 years old right now. I remember when I was much younger back then, and how hard we are on our own peers and so on. and you're just doing kid things at the end of the day. But someone wearing a device like that, yeah, there's a ton of jokes that would probably come with it, and a ton of like shaming that may come with that as well. So I think that it's our duty and our job as the elders to be able to make them feel more comfortable and let them know, like, hey, like, look, I'm just like you, you know. There's a lot of other people too that have the same thing, and it's okay. You know, it's one of my favorite sayings, it's okay not to be okay. So, you know, allowing and helping those younger ones to be able to realize that, I think is really important.
Mm-hmm. And for me, the thing that really bothers me is when adults kind of look down on people who are type 1 diabetic. And I mean, I can't speak for people who have other conditions, but I'm assuming that they probably had to deal with that too. Someone I had on the podcast recently, Eva Rubin, who plays for Illinois. She's a basketball player. I mean, she was talking about, she went to Arizona State, and she didn't come out and say it, but she's alluding to the fact that those coaches like weren't really willing to work with her all that much.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I'm a pretty chill guy, but that's something that gets me going. And I just can't deal with that.
And it's the lack of knowledge, it's the ignorance of that stems from that, because they don't understand what's going on until that actually happens to you. Yeah. I mean, the mood changes whenever your blood sugar is extremely high, or when you start to dip, like that stuff is real. And if you've never experienced that, you're not going to understand that. So, you know, I have to, you know, give a lot of props to some of my friends and family members as well, that, you know, whenever I do have those moments, because I'm new to devices. I just really got the devices maybe, I don't think it's been a full year yet. Mm-hmm. And so I was doing everything manually for 2 years. And with that, you know, I had a lot of highs and a bunch of different lows, just trying to find that balance. And it's frustrating whenever you're still trying to find that balance too. So with all of those little factors, I mean, it's tough, and people don't realize that gym teachers, you know, a lot of other adults, they don't really understand what's going on. And then, you know, it can be a lot of issues. Here's my thing yelling at me right now. I think it's about time to change out it's about time to change out my pod here in a little bit too. So, but no, I mean, it's a wonderful thing. I'm glad that I was able to, you know, start using these devices, and I love it. And so
same here.
We have to just spread the love a lot more, you know.
For sure. And I mean, that's something I try to do with this podcast. I mean, diabetics like you or any of the people I've talked about, I mean, they always have an open invite to come chat whenever you guys want to, because we got to be here for each other, because at the end of the day, it's us, you know.
Exactly.
We got our family, especially for me, like my mom and dad, all the things they did when I was little, dealing with this. But I mean, aside from them, I mean, we have to have each other's back.
Yeah, no, for sure. I used to, before I got into the professional industry, I used to own my own practice from Oklahoma City. Yeah. And I had a gym. I found a warehouse style building, turned it into more so like a performance style training, but also I would do physical therapy rehab with clients out of it as well. And my first time ever coming across someone, you know, with type 1 was at that time. I had an athlete, and he was a high school football player, type 1. And, you know, he had been living with it most of his life. So he was well past the honeymoon stages and very knowledgeable. So, I took that into consideration, because, you know, training alone, different type of intensities, different type of trainings, everybody's body is different too. So, you know, what aerobic exercise for me might do something different for you with, you know, your type 1D. So, getting the knowledge from him, I just took time, sat down with him, talked about it, had him explain, like, let me know what's, you know, show me these devices, and whatever I need to do, I just, told them, let me know whatever I need to do. And, but I always made sure there were like some type of snacks there for, hypoglycemia, because obviously that's when things can get really, really bad. And, but, between the communication and the trust between he and I, we were able to find the balance with his training. There was times in the middle of his training, he'd have to stop and go sit down and take a break. And this isn't, that wasn't the time for me with his training to be an egotistical type of strength coach at the time. It's like, hey, person first, do what you have to do, and then we'll come back to it, and we'll find that fine balance between it. So.
Mm-hmm. And all my coaches that I had growing up, I never played past high school, but I mean, all those guys like Coach Keever, Coach Clark, shout out to them if they tune into this one, but they were all super amazing in terms of that.
Awesome.
But I don't know why, but I love talking about like the player coach / trainer relationships in sports. I mean, I can already tell that that's very important to you. I mean, talk a little bit about like how much of an emphasis you put on that relationship.
I think it's really important from every different level. It may be, whether it's collegiately, whether it's grade school, and then especially on the professional level. Where I'm at now in the professional level, these individuals see people come in and out of the doors all the time, in my role. So they're meeting all type of different healthcare professionals all the time that, are always trying to help them or give them information about their body, when in fact these guys know a lot more about their body than anything. So it takes some trust. But the biggest thing is building the trust and the rapport with the athlete. And I say, a lot of that just comes just from being genuine. If you could just be yourself, be genuine, do things with compassion and care, that goes much further than anything. And sometimes it's going to take guys maybe a full season before they do develop the trust with you. Because again, it's just like, who is this guy coming in? I don't know. It's something like that. So you have to be aware of that. You have to not, keep any chips on your shoulders or anything, and just let it go, and just move on, and don't take anything to heart, because whenever they start to see that, and if you start getting emotional or whatever it may be, then that's when things can kind of start going kind of south for you. But I think the coach player relationship is, from a professional standpoint, is extremely important to develop, because then you start getting a buy-in into your programs and your training, where they don't care about how smart you are. Yeah. I see so many people that come in all the time that are pretty intelligent. They don't really care about that at all. So I can't come in there and just say like, oh, well, this is my background. These are the letters after my name, such and such and such and such. They really give a crap about that. They don't care about that. They want to know if you're there for the right reason. And once you can develop that and show them that, then I think things can go in a great favor for both the individuals. So
100%. I wanted to go, we got off on a little thing there, but I want to go back to kind of your story of being diagnosed and just kind of your emotions going through it. I know you said that you kind of had some time where you were just like, why? And then you obviously got past that. But
yeah, so I remember this scenario extremely vividly. I don't know if you as a kid remember your situation. I think this is going to be something that I remember for the rest of my life. I was in the G League. I worked for the Minnesota Timberwolves and their G League affiliate, the Iowa Wolves. It was our last road trip and the last 2 games of the season. So we were flying from Iowa, and mind you, we in the G League, we fly commercial. So yeah, so we were up at like 4 something, 5 o'clock in the morning, checking in, getting everything prepared. And we were going from Iowa to Arizona, play there, and then leave from Arizona to go to Salt Lake City. So that morning when I was at the airport in Iowa, I just remember being extremely thirsty that day. And I was like, good God. I was like, man, I am thirsty. And I'm like knocking back water. And it was just like nonstop. It wasn't just like my throat was dry or my mouth was dry. I was just extremely, extremely thirsty. I felt like I could literally take a straw dub and hop in a body of water and just chill and just pull from that straw and just keep going nonstop. Mm. And so that was my first red flag that morning. I was like, I don't know why I'm just so thirsty. I literally probably finished a gallon in a matter of like a couple hours. So it's a lot of water, right? Mm-hmm. The next thing for me was, I'm pretty familiar with my body with any type of flight, regardless, if it's like an hour and a half flight or whatever. The most, if I have to use the restroom on a flight, it might be one time that I have to use a restroom. Yeah. And that day, after the water kick happened, then I felt like I had the urge to go to the restroom every 15 minutes. Like literally, I would go, sit down 15 minutes right on the dot. Had to go again. I'll hop up and go. And then I may not be producing anything or much, but I just felt like I had to go urinate every 15 minutes. So that one flight, I was getting up and down probably like 5 times on one flight. And I knew, I was like, that's not like me to have to go to the restroom that much in one sitting, So that was the second thing. So this was going on throughout the entire road trip. I communicated with, my staff, my coaches and stuff, like something's going on. I'm not sure, but at the time there just really wasn't much I can do. Let's finish these road trips, these games, get back. And then, I would make the appointment with my primary care. The third thing that happened, I noticed I stepped on the scale and my body weight at the time, I was about 215. I was at 198 when I stepped on the scale. So I lost that much weight in a matter of some days. And so what was happening, now, like after talking to my endocrine and what was going on, my A1C, when I got back, I got my labs and everything. My A1C was at a 13 or something like that. It was pretty high. And
ain't no pretty high about it.
Yeah, so which, for the viewers, normal, A1C, you want to be, under a 7, if you can get down to, 6.5 to 6.0 is ideal. But yeah, I just, after that, I just knew like something's going on with my body. I have no idea what's going on with my body. So I made, the call to my doctor, got in for that appointment. Next day, that morning, April 1st. It was on April 1st. I went the day before that. Then on April 1st, I got a call early in the morning from nursing staff and it said, hey, your prescriptions are ready. And I'm like, prescriptions? I just had lab work yesterday. What do you mean? And they were like, oh, no one's called to talk to you about. It's like, no, like this is my first call that I've heard of after my lab work that I had yesterday. They were like, oh yeah, you're diabetic. So then in my head, I'm like, diabetic, like what in the how is this possible? Like what in the world? And that's whenever, the psyche just kicked in for me. So it was, for me, it was the why and how and what, like, what did I do? How did this happen? And why did it happen? And, got set up with my endocrinologist in Oklahoma City. And, she broke it down to me, the form that I had. And at the time, there were so many different names. It was like 1.5, 1, type 1. And then she said, but basically the real name that I had is type 1 LADA, LADA, which is the latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. Mm-hmm. And she said it's very rare. They don't know why it happens, where it comes from. It's just an autoimmune disease that happens where it's very rare. I don't really have family members that have autoimmune diseases either in my family. So it's not like something that runs in my family. Mm-hmm. So that's the other reason why I felt like, well, I'm the chosen one when it comes to this. But yeah, so that's kind of my story when I found out about it. And it did take me some time to settle and just be with what it is. And but after a while, it takes several months to get through that honeymoon stage, to figure it out, to find a balance, to find out what your insulin to carb ratio is, or your correction factors and things of that nature. It took some time for that. Now that everything is balanced out, life is so much more comfortable. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my story of how I found out and when I found out.
No, I mean, I don't want to talk bad about those people that conducted your labs and everything. So I'm sure they're great people, but the fact that they didn't call you that day whenever they found out, I mean, that's very surprising to me. I don't know.
It was some miscommunication in that doctor's office. I think when they put the doctor put the prescription and stuff in, someone dropped the ball of calling to say, hey, because this is my first time having to deal with giving myself insulin. So, I needed a breakdown of how often I need to do it, especially with two different types, my slow acting and my fast acting at the time. Mm-hmm. So that, someone did definitely drop the ball at that time. But, I was able to go in and we were able to sort some things out and go from there. But yeah, no, it was upsetting for me as well. I voiced, my frustration with them to let them know that it's like, that's just, that's not right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a, pretty knowledgeable person, and I just look at it, if there was someone else that had no idea about medicine or anything like that in the medical world, how that could have impacted their life and what could have happened after that, the negatives or whatever, there's so many different things, but yeah, that's a whole nother tangent.
I mean, so when you're kind of like dealing with this and learning about that, I mean, how hard was it to kind of retrain your mind and your eating habit? I mean, I already know that you're a very healthy individual to begin with, but how hard was that to kind of, do a complete 180 in terms of counting carbs and all that stuff?
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. And there's still some times that, I may under or over count or, but it was really tough just to try to figure it out. I think luckily for me, I did have some knowledge base into, your nutritional values. So for me, that was on the upside, but other than that, it was tough to deal with, to try to figure everything out and go from there.
Mm-hmm. And then I want to talk a little bit about your career just before we hop off here. But I mean, obviously you're with the Portland Trailblazers. So talk a little bit about that kind of career arc and what you're doing for them now.
So my title is a sports performance therapist. So mainly I'm in strength and conditioning is most of my duties, the strength and conditioning and nutrition and things, but I also help out with some physical therapy or maintenance management for athletes as well, just a couple other guys. So my day-to-day is just to make sure that guys are doing our fitness programs, whatever we need to do, maintaining, especially my younger ones. And if they're not getting, high minutes throughout a game, and to kind of duplicate that stress management, and that way their body is always ready at some point in time, because in the industry, you never know when your number's going to get called. You never know whenever you're going to have to go from 0 minutes to, 10 to 15 minutes. So you always have to stay ready. So I think that's my job, is to make sure that, hey, they're understanding of what's going on. This isn't punishment, but at the same time, we have to get some work done. That way your body just always stays ready and well oiled. So that's kind of my day-to-day job description with the organization.
And I mean, how cool is it to see guys like, obviously Damian, Lillard, just kind of seeing their approach and how they approach training, and then compared to someone like Carmelo Anthony. I mean, those two guys are in completely different stages in their career.
Yeah, no, it's pretty neat to see. It's all starts with a mindset, and those, the ones you named off, and those guys are pros. Like they've been there, they've done it, they know about themselves very well. and they know what it takes to stay into the routine, especially after you start getting a little bit more miles on your body, because then it takes a little bit longer for your body to get warmed up and so on. And the biggest thing is just durability. Yeah, if you're durable, then you stay available, and so if you're available, then you're able to help produce on the court. And so these guys, they understand that. And then compared to some of the younger ones that are just coming out of college, their bodies, a lot of times they just want to get up and just go straight to the court without doing the proper management, lifting and neuromuscular resetting, whatever it may be. So that's where a lot of my knowledge and educating comes to play, and helping out with those individuals and making sure, like, hey, this is why, this is what you have to do. You have to approach every day as a pro, because it's a different league from being in college. Completely different league.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, last thing I wanted to ask about was, talk a little bit about the behind the scenes things that, all the guys on the team are doing. Because I saw recently, I know he won't care, but Damian Lillard was getting hate on social media just for not performing well to start the season or whatever the case was. But those people don't know the day-to-day grind that him and anyone in the league or any athlete in general goes through. So talk a little bit about the things that go on behind the scenes that the public doesn't see.
Yeah, they're hard workers every day, in the gym, making sure they're doing whatever they have to do to stay sharp. And for someone like Dame, when you talk about the media or whatever hating on having a slow start or whatever, no one's really worried about that. We're not worried about that. He's not worried about that, because we know what he's capable of doing. And everyone has their days, so it's just a matter of time. It's a long season. We play 82 games in a year, regular season wise. And so, these guys are always, staying on top of their body, staying well-oiled, still, maintenance and in the gym, getting up shots, running through sets, getting, communicating with not only the coaches, but, the other players as well, and going through their schemes. So from day to day, every day is different, but yeah, they come in, we touch on our weight room stuff, whatever we have to do, or whoever he's working with, from maintenance just to make sure his body is right. They stay on top of this every single day, and then boom, get on the floor, do whatever individual skill work you have to do, and then we have our practices and so on. So that's kind of like it's a repetitive thing.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's kind of like our day-to-day thing that most of the guys do, and how they stay on top of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know you got to get going here soon, so I'm gonna wrap this up. But thank you so much for coming on and being open and being someone who's vocal about their type 1 diabetes. For me, like a younger kid with it, and even younger kids that do have it now, it means a lot. And I just can't thank you enough for coming on.
No, I really appreciate you, for inviting me to do this and to use my voice to help, whoever else it is that may be dealing with the same stuff that we're going through. Even the adults, whatever adults that might be having a hard time, because it's a real deal, thing. Like I've heard of, the suicide by mouth, individuals that are just they get tired of the maintenance, the manage, because it takes a lot of preparing and planning for road trips. I always have to make sure there's always some type of snack around me. Mm-hmm. And if I go out on a hike, I always have to make sure. So there's so much planning, and you have to be prepared for any type of situation that it goes through. And I think it's important that individuals that are dealing with type 1D, and even those that aren't, that can understand that, and they can be well prepared for someone that they might come across, at a time that they might need their help. So
yes, sir.
I appreciate you for this, and this is an awesome thing that you're doing, and just keep it up.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Anytime you want to come back on chat, let me know.
Yeah, sounds good, man. I really appreciate you, and you keep in touch. Anything that you need to, you want to holler at me about or talk about or whatever. Yeah, just let me know.
Yes, sir. Of course. Hey, stay safe, and good luck the rest of the way through the year too.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much, Dub.